Good evening. My name is Rick Prescott with the McHenry County Detachment of the Marine Corps League, and I would like to introduce you to Jason Hertha. Jason is currently the Commandant of the McHenry County Detachment of the Marine Corps League and a Marine.
That's right.
Anyway, hello, Jason.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here.
Great to be here. So,
Well, let's start off this by asking, what years did you serve in the Corps, and what was your MOS?
so I served in between '04 to '08, right at the height of the 9/11 situation. And as a matter of fact, that was the driving force for me to join up so I can, serve my country. And I needed a swift kick in the pants because I was, needed some discipline in my life. But I was 0311, so that's infantry rifleman, stationed with 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, based out of Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, which, some people said, it's going to be awful being stationed up there, but no.
Not in Hawaii.
It was,
How can it be awful being
Right?
stationed
Yeah.
in Hawaii, right?
it was amazing. Perfect weather year-round. Like, if it
Yeah.
rained, it rained for 10 minutes, and then it
Exactly.
just stopped. So, yeah, I really didn't have too many complaints, but, yeah.
Wow. Now, I understand from you that you had served in the Gulf War. Can you tell me a little bit about your experiences in Hawaii? Well, what transitioned you to end up in your military service overseas?
So after I got done with SOI, School of Infantry, I believe the 52 area or Area 52, because I try to go off of Area 51, so I just
It's
go
not
one
the
number
same.
up. Yeah,
It's not
so
the same.
not the same, but it's one number up, so it's all right. 52 area, there we go. But yeah, 52 area, got done with that, and that's where the needs of the Marine Corps needed me was Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. So 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, Lima Company, got to represent. And it was a lot of fun. But however, the leadership out there, it was very, very good. We had even for the new guys that were coming in, because we're going in at the height of the war that was going on. And my first deployment was Afghanistan. The second one was Iraq. But regardless, since we're infantry, we have to constantly be up on our SOPs, constantly doing drills.
So you guys are constantly training.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Prep, just like typical Marines,
Right.
preparing for war.
Absolutely.
Constantly.
Yeah, a lot of fire team rushes. I'm up, you see me, I'm down. Doing a lot of mount, which is room clearing, because that's a lot of the urban environment that was in Iraq and Afghanistan too. We did a lot of that. And just constantly drilling, so it just becomes more second nature when you're in that environment to where...
So when did you go overseas?
So I went overseas, let's see. Afghanistan was 2004, roughly around October time frame. So like right around the Halloween time frame, that's when I deployed, and we did 8 months. I was in Jalalabad.
Was that a large base?
With our base, it was pretty tiny. So we had it was basically like a fob or a firm base.
Right.
So compared to other bases, this thing was super tiny. We had the wooden hooches that were built, basically like a Kwanzaa hut, but made all out of wood. That can house like a squad of Marines in there. So with us, we had, I think it was. We had 1st, 2nd, and 3rd platoon. I was with 3rd platoon at that time. And then there was 3 squad bays, so each squad would have, their own separate little squad bay going on.
Right. So it was a squad bay type of environment. It wasn't individual rooms or anything.
Oh, no. It wasn't like, all fancy special forces stuff. So
Yeah.
13 guys in one room after a nice long patrol and getting really stinky in there. So
Everything else. What was your mission while you were there?
So our first mission was obviously to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy, as we're all programmed to do as infantrymen. But we did a lot of hearts and minds humanitarian missions out there too. So presence patrols, combat patrols, looking to see if we can actually get some sort of contact engagement going on, which happened a couple times. But there was a lot of humanitarian stuff, so hearts and minds missions, and we wanted to, win the hearts and minds of the population out there, because it's easier for them to work with us when they develop a sense of trust, especially too when they see people all tacticaled out in their country with weapons and whatnot. So it could be a little intimidating, but a lot of people are actually pretty welcoming with us being there because of the fact that you had the Taliban that was strong arming the population, and we just didn't do missions out in Jalalabad. We would do, especially in Afghanistan, a lot more mechanized patrols. So we were going like 3-4 hours out. So we had, your classic Humvee where it was a hatchback. I think it's how you say it, hatchback.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times the Humvees that we were in, it was open-ended. So it's basically you had 2-seater Humvee, and then in the back it was a square box with up armor plating. So it was basically kind of like a pickup truck, but a really down and dirty Humvee that we would house Marines in and whatnot. So so we were wide open.
Right. So you guys did hearts and minds type of missions, patrols. Did you go into villages? So what did you guys do when you went into a village and all?
So when we went into villages, we we do our little tactical formations, so spread out to a certain distance. So like if we do get contact, you're not clustered up, and it's going to be easy for us to get waxed. But regardless, too, we would go out into the towns, see the locals, wave high and all that stuff. Some of us.
So give us a typical day. What would happen in a typical day when you guys went out on patrol? Mm-hmm. What was the tension like? Like you read. On the western side of Afghanistan, you couldn't do a patrol without having contact. So was it like that around that time frame? Because I know we were fairly new there still. Mm-hmm. So from what I can gather, based on my reads, is that during that time it was still fairly peaceful. You guys are still hunting for Osama,
right?
And not finding him. He's hiding in the caves on the eastern side, and so on. And this side, you're getting a lot of government support. And a lot of support from the people, but you still had that Al Qaeda type of presence. These people wanted to get at you guys,
right?
So give me an idea of what it was like, a typical day in the life of an infantryman in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so it really depends on that day too, because some of the squads are resting while the other ones are on patrol. But however, the dynamic of Afghanistan and Iraq were a little different. So with our first deployment with Afghanistan, you weren't getting shot at every day, and that's what I assumed that was going to happen. You actually have a lot of downtime as well too, but we are constantly being told complacency kills. So when you get complacent and relaxed, that's when the stuff hits the fan, and you can't do that because then it's going to be like, oh my god, a culture shock. But for the most part, we would have a mission to where, all right, we're going out to, some foreign town or whatever to talk to one of the sheiks out there. So it was basically the head guy that's out there that, I don't know, kind of like a mayor figure,
right?
If that makes any sense whatsoever. I'm trying to recall all this stuff. But so we would meet up with certain people to gather intelligence. But again, too, we are in our Humvees, so we go out in a nice long convoy. Then when we get out, we'll start running patrols throughout the town and whatnot. So if we have the platoon with us, each squad will take turns doing patrols throughout the town. And of course, we'll go through the downtown areas where they have the bazaars and whatnot. So it was pretty cool that you get to see how the, Afghanis were doing their trading and bartering and all sorts of stuff. And there'd be kids like walking around with like little sugary snacks that were like circular formation, and we'd like buy them and stuff because we were starving all the time. And the flatbread that they had with these little wedge potatoes that were was it orange? So yeah, it was pretty neat. But a lot of the times, like, we would not get hit, which was good, and that fear starts subsiding after a while. So you actually get really comfortable with the environment. I mean, you don't want to be comfortable in the sense like nothing's going to happen,
right?
But you get acclimated,
right,
to it. And I find that to be a great asset, because if you're relaxed, but you're still on watch, that you're going to be able to react quicker if you get contact.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it was different. Like we would do combat raids. You know, sometimes we wouldn't find anybody. So that's just the nature of the beast. But
So what would a combat raid be like?
so there was actually a meme going around where there was a 46 or 47 on top of a building in the mountains of Afghanistan where it says Marines still making house calls and all that stuff. That was a part of Operation, what was it? Operation Spurs, I think. But so anyway, they flew us two out because we were looking for like a medium value target. We get there and it's platoon, centered, but we also had people from the Army coming out and providing support and whatnot too. So we landed in this area to where people had to jump off into the snow that was like knee high, and then the other Chinook would come in and so forth. And there was the house that was targeted to where we set up a cordon on the outside, so if anybody comes out, we can nab them, not shoot them, but grab them because we need the intelligence.
Yeah, right.
But then we had the other squad, one of the squads that was set ready to actually go into the house, and that's where a lot of the mount training comes into play. But unfortunately, we didn't find anybody. But it was still quite the experience. It was very, very cold out. We had a couple guys pass out, and yeah, it was definitely a rush for sure.
Right. Wow. So what was it like overall? You were there for how long?
We did 8 months.
You were there for 8 months. You mentioned that. So you got 8 months, and all of that in Jalalabad?
Yes. So Jalalabad was our firm base, and we would just do patrols whatever day felt necessary that our higher ups would.
So you would fly out sometimes. You would drive out.
We would all just drive out. But yeah, flying out was very, very rare. I think that was the only time that we flew out was doing that, doing the mission.
That snatch and grab.
Yeah, and there was nobody there, so.
Right. But you gained intelligence out of it. So.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we gained a lot of intelligence out of it, and with the time when we did get contact it was a 3-day ordeal. So I believe I was in 3rd squad, 3rd platoon with Lima Company. So we're going out to Dawit Shah, which I believe is in the Korengal Valley. So I can't remember if it was on the outskirts or not. I'll have to do a little more research. But anything Korengal Valley related, you're going to get hit because that's a really big hot zone over there. And, if people are familiar with the documentary Restrepo, that's people, the guys out there that had their base was constantly in contact almost every day out there.
Right.
So we're going out there, and I didn't really think much about it whatsoever if I was going to see contact or not. And we had a guy, I think a JTAF guy, Air Force person, who was a master sergeant. Really cool guy. So he had some sort of like intercom gear or radio gear where he can start tracking in on the signal of the insurgents that had their little communications, walkie-talkies or whatever.
Right.
So we're driving on through, and I believe it was Valentine's Day, so February 14th. And, we're getting to, because we were going to meet up at a school that had one of the sheiks out there to get information and all that good stuff. So we started getting intercom intel that, oh yeah, they're setting up on us right now. I was like, oh man, this is about to hit the fan. Here I am, 20 years old. I think I was like 20 or 19. No, I was 19 at that time, getting radio called in that we're about to get hit. But then I remember that as soon as we got that information, we all disbanded out of our trucks. We turned them around and started driving the other way, pulling like some mental jiu-jitsu on the people that were scoping us up, because there was, from what I recall, like a rock face, and then you had, the town of like houses and whatnot, the road, and then you had the valley on the other side where there was mountains, where I believe, from what I was told, that there was fortified bunkers from when the Russians were there, but then the insurgents would take over and use those fighting spots.
Right.
So they were, climbing up in the mountains because that's their thing, is mountain warfare. But, we kind of adapted and overcame to all their stuff. But yeah, so they're like, yeah, it's delaying their plans and whatnot. And, we hopped back in the truck and then finally got to the school, did some patrols. And then, fast forwarding to the morning, we hopped back in our trucks and I'm like, yeah, we're totally getting hit today. Like you just knew it. So we had our MVGs on, the little cat eyes, lights off and all that. But it's dawn.
It's after dark now.
Yeah, it's after dark, so it's the dawn's breaking, and the Humvee trucks are not that quiet, so you're going to hear it.
Yep.
So we're driving, and then all of a sudden, the Air Force JTAF guy is getting more communication. Yeah, they're sitting up on us right now, and then lo and behold, I hear one dude, one Marine screaming RPG. Like, everything happened so fast, so I could not see the rounds, but I would just see puffs of smoke, and then just the rounds just flying everywhere and whatnot. And I was a 203 gunner at the time, so we stop, contact, front or whatever. I believe it was on the side, so contact maybe left or something. Toward the mountains over. Get out. As we're hopping out of the truck, I hit the ground, and then I'm looking behind me. One of my guys is on the ground all in a daze. I'm like, oh man, he must have got hit. So I'm grabbing him, trying to pull him up. I'm like, get the F up, man, let's go. And his team leader comes running by. He's like, he's okay. He just hit his head. So apparently he must have tripped out of the truck and hit his head on the ground before his feet did, which is like, oh, thank God. But we still have a good laugh about that till to this day.
In the middle of a firefight.
In the middle of a firefight.
You got a big giggle out of it.
A big giggle out of it. And so,
Hello, Marines.
Right, yeah, right. So, and this is on the 15th, so it was payday. So, we had Marines, some of the machine gunners with their 50 cals lighting, just spraying and praying, lighting everything up, screaming, "This is what we get paid for." Waiting for some months and months, out of all the training to finally do their job. But yeah, it was quite the rush. But yeah, so he was okay. He just got a little knock on the noggin there. I was just kind of launching 203 after 203, hoping I would hit something. Hop back in the vehicles. We got out of the kill zone. We set up a cordon that night around, just to make sure that nobody comes in or out, or if we get hit, that the whole place is surrounded. But apparently, I think we got 3 insurgents with that firefight. So it probably lasted 30 to 45 minutes. So it happened really quick, but it was also really slow at the same time. I can't really explain it, but we didn't catch any casualties on our end. So very grateful about that. But yeah, it was definitely a rush.
So you guys basically provided suppressing fire.
Yes.
While other guys were up in the thick of it.
Right.
And so, wow.
So I think everybody was just doing suppressive fire and also kill fire at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right. So
there's no such thing as suppressive fire.
No, you suppress to take out the enemy. So
exactly.
It was very simple. One direction. We got a rock face that was 3 feet away, so we couldn't turn this way to grab cover. You're right there, so it's all right, start pointing and shooting that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
wow.
But 19 years old, I'm like, wow, this is very surreal. But with all the training that we went through, our squad performed very, very well when it came to the fire team rushing. So instead of aggressing forward, we got out, or they got out, because part of our squad was split up in different trucks. So they would get all on line, providing suppressive fire, and then one guy would run back, boom, plop down while they're providing suppressive fire, while the other guy runs in the back and provides suppressive fire. So you're constantly moving a line of suppressive fire while the person is running behind, with the cover fire.
While the line is eventually moving.
Right. It's kind of like a caterpillar, right? So it can go like a caterpillar this way, or let's say you got 6 guys, so the 6 guys drop down, and then every odd person would run up, move forward, drop down while these 3 are firing, and then they drop down, they get up, boom, boom, boom.
Leapfrogging.
Right, leapfrogging. So
those tactics from back in the 70s never changed in that particular regard. That's how we took hills.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything about the training protocols in the 70s.
That's exactly what we did. Yeah. We would have your teams, your fire teams, and you would leapfrog.
Gotcha.
Suppressive fire and leapfrog. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, I read a long time ago by a fellow by the name of Gwyn Dwyer. He wrote The 10,000 Day War. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the best documentaries I've ever read. But one of the things he talked about was that in the heat of conflict, in the heat of battle, mm-hmm. there is the ones who usually win in battle. It goes back to the Civil War days and even till today in modern warfare. is the group that panics the least.
Right.
So what was that experience like? The panicky feeling. How did you guys deal with that as individuals? And then how did the outcome work out as a group? Because my personal experience in policing is that when you're in that type of situation and things are cloudy,
Right.
and it happens so quickly, you usually kick back into your training.
Absolutely.
And that training is what brings you out of it. And
Right.
you just snap to that, and then it's almost automated. It's an automatic type of response.
Absolutely.
So I'm just kind of curious, in your view, having that experience, what was that like? What was it? Can you describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that type of situation where you have to use your, tactics and skills, especially when you're getting shot at, one, you got to keep it simple. The more moving parts there are, the more your brain has to process. But getting acclimated to that sort of adrenaline and chaotic environment dynamic, it really always stems to me from boot camp day one. So especially with Marine Corps boot camp, you get off the bus and they're screaming and yelling at you. So it's a culture shock. You're going to have your nerves all jittering up and all that stuff. When I got off the bus in San Diego, I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? This is crazy. But what I didn't realize is that the longer you stay in that environment, you start getting more acclimated to it and getting used to it. So then once you hit, your training, let's say 52 area, School of Infantry, they, you get to the training and, those kind of act like drill instructors and whatnot, but you have to keep that intensity up so your brain kind of gets calloused to that environment. It's kind of like working out, but you're working on your brain and putting it in very uncomfortable environments. And then once you're done with 52 area, you go to the fleet, where that was kind of scary too, because especially in wartime, where get done with our training, and then we had to go to Camp Pendleton to 29 Palms, and we heard all the stories like, oh, you're gonna be a boot and all that stuff, and they're gonna give you so much crap and this, that, and the other, and you're gonna be someone's,
Someone to abuse.
yeah, someone to abuse, basically, right? Yeah. So it was kind of true in a sense, but since we had to go to combat, they laid off on all that stuff. But it didn't mean that they were not hard on us, because what they everything that the higher ups and our leadership had to do had to count. So of course, all right, you got to keep it really intense. If you're screaming and yelling and whatnot.
So do they make it? Obviously, they make it as realistic as they possibly can.
Yes.
And now when you're there in the environment,
right,
the training kicks in,
right,
and everything is pretty much automatic.
Right.
You just you did your job.
Right. You're still, when you're getting shot at, some people really like it. Some people don't, but they still perform very well. I was kind of in between. I was like, oh man, this is the real deal. But however, even if you're scared, you have your training to fall back on, but you've done it so many times to where you can see what you're doing and start overriding a lot of that fear response. I mean, you're still going to be, have the fear,
You're able
the
to
stress.
function.
You're able to function under that, and then once all said and done, I've always been pretty good at, brushing it off like right afterwards, and that, I'm very grateful for that. I guess for that natural strength, because there's a lot of guys that get out and it's just constantly in them over and over and over again. And for me, I could definitely differentiate, like, well, all right, I'm out in public. There's no Iraqis running around with weapons and this, that, and the other and stuff. And
from a general point of view, it's called it's critical incident stress,
right?
And it's a survivor stress basically. And when you're kissing death right in the face,
right?
A lot of people, I guess we all handle it a little bit differently,
right?
And but it, I know from working with you, you're obviously well balanced and everything else, just like every other vet.
I try to be.
Regarding that issue, let's just touch on it just for a second. Regarding the PTSD stuff that everyone loves to talk about, I have an opinion on it, and to me, I call it warrior scars.
Right.
And it is an honor to have that. And I've heard people in the corporate community actually criticize and say, hey, you know what? Watch these drivers because they suffer from PTSD and they hug the middle of the road and they increase the likelihood of an accident and so forth. And I remember calling this guy on the phone. It was a HR fellow out of Washington or out of New York. And I told him, I asked him, did you do anything about this? He goes, no. I said, let me ask you something. How many accidents comparable? Obviously, you know what you're talking about because you like to spill off this comment. But how many accidents do your veterans have compared to the numbers of accidents that your non-veterans have? Mm-hmm. I said, I bet if you did that study, which I know you didn't, you will find that the accident rate on the part of veterans, because they are alert, and they're disciplined, and it has nothing to do with PTSD. Mm-hmm. And if they drive closer to the center line because they're afraid of IEDs and that sort of thing, guess what? That's an asset as opposed to the other fellows that fall asleep at the wheel. Right. You know, and I said, I bet if you did that study in the trucking industry, you'll find that that would be more of a realistic case. Right. So your veterans are assets, a higher degree of an asset, and something that's far more hireable than your average individual. That's my personal opinion, and maybe I'm prejudiced in that particular regard. But you know, it's that sort of thing about the PTSD thing. Mm-hmm. Some people from the '80s on, it was the buzzword of the '90s and so on, and you know, they think it's a weakness, and it's not. It turns out in many cases to be an asset. And the other thing I look at is if people came back from World War II. The vast majority of those, 10% of those, were on the line. They came back and they turned out to be some of the most productive individuals. Right. How many senators? Senator Enoy, Bob Dole, and famous names of senators that Bob Dole was wounded. He had a dead arm, and he became a senator of the United States and became a major asset and a very strong mind and power, a powerful force in our Senate during those years. Absolutely. And now we're repeating that again with our current vets going into politics. Right. So this is an awesome thing. So much for the argument about PTSD being a disabler, it becomes an enabler.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, with the buzzword going on with PTSD, especially nowadays, you know, and I don't mean to be biased in any way, but there's a lot of people that, you know, haven't been in the military. Oh, my anxiety or PTSD and this, that, and the other.
Because my dad yelled at me when I was a kid. Right.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When it comes to normal everyday stress, which is a healthy stress and normal stress, that's normal everyday stress. Now, if your dad is beating the crap out of you for no reason, that's a different story. But that's everyday life. So you have to get used to that. Now, when it comes to PTSD, it's that you are put in an environment like getting shot at constantly, and you don't have time to, not get over it, but to process. Right. It. So it's like, all right, you got shot at, you see one of your buddies get blown up or whatever, you just suck it up and move on. But you haven't had time to process that stuff, so then when you get in the civilian world, then that stuff starts come flooding back in. And it's like, well, how do you process that? And that's really one of the biggest key factors is if you know how to process stuff, it's just basically sitting with it a bit, letting it marinate. You know, you go through it. It may be uncomfortable, but you think about it here and there, and you get some good tools under your belt through a trained professional. Or I'm really big into meditation and whatnot, especially you know, looking at things from an observational standpoint. But then it starts decompressing, and you start getting rid of a lot of that emotional baggage, but also the emotional judgment behind it. So, like, if you think about it, it's like, oh, well, you're put right back into that. Your body thinks like it's actually happening right now when it's not. Right. And, you know, you sit and breathe, and it's like, I'm not here right now. That your brain is just lying to you. And just because someone's walking down the street, now my subconscious is trying to look for things that are going to replicate what, you know, craziness that I have experienced, but that's not true whatsoever. It's just some little old lady walking across the street, like, no, she doesn't have an IED or any of that stuff. Right. And the more you start training yourself with those sorts of things, then it starts leveling out. But on the flip side, your PTSD becomes your greatest asset because it's a motivating force, if you choose for it to be so, to you to start self-bettering yourself.
Well, you know, and that's a wonderful and quite an accurate perspective. There's no doubt, you know, personal experience and everything else involved in that evaluation. There are cases out there, that, no doubt, that to process the totality of the experience these guys and gals had experienced, they'll never get over it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, some of the
not a matter of
is
just
very
processing and
right.
things go back to normal,
Right.
because it's not.
Yeah,
But
some of the stuff is, that what some of the gals and guys that
Right.
witnessed like in Nam and all that, like, it's horrific.
Yeah.
And like that,
And even in Afghanistan.
oh yeah, and
places
that'll
like
be
Iraq
with
and
them
so on.
for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Like, woo.
Right.
So
Well, folks, I think we're running out of time here. What I'd like to say first off is thank you so much for providing us with this incredible insight.
thank you, pleasure to be here.
And watch for our future videos that will be coming out. We're going to be no doubt interviewing several veterans within our league, and any other veterans that we can come across as well, because we want to document their stories, document their experiences, and so that we can share this with one another. So anyway, on that, I guess we'll sign off, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for your attendance. I hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you very much for having me. Oh, this is great coffee, by the way.
Awesome.
Too.
Thank you, brother. Hoorah.
Semper Fi.
Jason is currently the Commandant of the McHenry County Detachment of the Marine Corps League, and a Marine. And we're here to interview him regarding his, there's my f***ing dog
Keep going.
shaking his f***ing tail right in the damn
screwed.
picture. I'm going to shoot the
keep going. Keep going.
as a Marine in the United States Marine Corps. I got to polish that up.
That's all right.
Anyway, so this is the days before striker vehicles and things like this. This is back when you had the original Humvees, the original trucks.
Hey, kitty.
And
A little surprise there.
so I know if we do this here, we're gonna get rid of the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, a lot of the fancy pants stuff that was